This 19th century insane asylum was abandoned 20 years ago, and it's creepy as hell. There's no better setting for a haunted house than a century-old asylum for the insane. And this abandoned asylum in Texas certainly has a few horror stories to tell. In 1889, the Texas government passed a bill to construct a mammoth mental health facility just outside San Antonio in southwest Texas, which would have room for some 500 patients. The facility grew steadily in size over the years, and by 1915 its capacity was increased to 1,800 patients. A decade later, moreover, the name of the institution was changed to the San Antonio State Hospital, signaling somewhat of a change of attitude towards mental illness. By the 1940s, however, the San Antonio State Hospital was in dire straits. The facility was filled to capacity, and funding was cut due to the outbreak of World War II. And so, in the 1960s the hospital was legally forced to lower the number of admissions and increase the number of staff. What's more, following the groundbreaking Civil Rights Act of 1964, the hospital accepted its first black patient that same year. As the years passed, the hospital underwent further modernizations. Despite a gradual fall in patients, by 1990, there were only 531 residents and 1,350 health workers at the facility. Although San Antonio State Hospital is still in operation today, 4 of its older buildings were abandoned in 1996. These derelict buildings are located a few miles away from the working part of the hospital. They include a guardhouse, a building for obedient patients, a maintenance facility and what is known only as the disciplinary unit, where patients supposedly underwent electrotherapy. What makes the whole thing so strange, however, is that the buildings appear to have been abandoned overnight. Just look at the documents and equipment that were left behind, as if discarded in a panic. It's no surprise, then, that the area has gained a reputation for being haunted. Indeed, those who have dared to sneak into the property have emerged with some very disturbing reports. They have recalled hearing yelling and voices pleading for help. Some have even seen shadowy figures and doors moving on their own, particularly in the disciplinary building. Perhaps the most unsettling account, however, came from an individual who visited the site in the summer of 2002 and claimed that her cousin saw a little girl in a white dress there. What makes this reported sighting even more frightening is the fact that another unrelated person corroborated it. But paranormal events aren't the only reason to steer clear of the asylum. The site is also frequented by ne'er-do-wells. The tall grass on the property, meanwhile, could potentially accommodate venomous rattlesnakes. The asylum is, however, popular with curious visitors, as demonstrated not just by online discussions but by the heavy presence of graffiti. Some of them, like the white supremacist groups who reportedly hold meetings here, are best avoided. And hundreds of patients who died in the asylum are buried in unmarked graves within its grounds. Some believe that their languishing spirits are responsible for the reported paranormal activity. Certainly, some old mental hospitals are notorious for having treated their patients badly. Britain's Bedlam Asylum, for instance, employed such cruel practices as spinning patients from a chair hanging from the ceiling in an attempt to cure them. Treatment of the mentally ill had improved by the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when this San Antonio asylum was still operating, but this doesn't mean that this Texan facility was a happy place. Unbelievably, the American Psychiatric Association only changed its stance on homosexuality being a mental illness in the mid-1970s. Plenty of gay and bisexual people, then, could have also received shock therapy at the facility. Considering the dark history of early mental health care, it's obvious why a place like this would be associated with evil spirits. The mystery surrounding the asylum is only further deepened by the fact that we don't know why it was abandoned in such haste. What makes the story even more puzzling is the presence of police in the area, not to mention the local resident who fires a shotgun into the air whenever anyone attempts to sneak onto the property. One proposed explanation is that local police bought the property and use it as an administrative center. But just like the question of what exactly the patients of this asylum went through, no one really knows for sure. Indeed, it seems as if there's more to this place than history lets on. To this day, there's no clear answer as to what exactly went on here besides the shock therapy, why the buildings were hastily abandoned and why the government seems so concerned with its security.